Hey everybody, today we're going to show you how you can use Gigasheet to integrate with Clearbit and GPT-3 to create customized outbound sales and marketing emails, enrich a massive spreadsheet of leads, and perhaps most importantly, how to integrate APIs without writing code. So here I've got a sheet of leads. It's got first name, last name, and email address. In this case, I'm looking at 1,000 rows of data, but the exact same process will work on hundreds of millions of rows. I'm just using a smaller data file for brevity and for the purposes of this example. I'm going to show you how you can use custom enrichments in Gigasheet to do a few different things. We're going to start with a pretty simple example using Clearbit to enrich these leads, figure out what company each of these people work for. We could, of course, do it pretty much by eye manually, like say this is SourceForge and Etsy, but maybe some of these other domains I'm not as familiar with. And also, that would not really work. I don't want to do that 1,000 times, and I certainly don't want to do it 100 million times or even 1 billion times. So that's really where Gigasheet comes in. So we'll start with doing just a basic function here to split off this domain name from the email address. And in this case, I'm actually going to use a data cleanup function called split column. I'll choose the email column, and I'm going to split on the @ symbol. So that will give me the first part of the email address and then, of course, the domain name. So actually, I'm going to rename this to be domain. And I'm actually going to get rid of this first column here and just delete it. So now I've got the top level domain from their email account. You can see that here. And what I want to use is the Clearbit service to get the company name from this. And then once we have that, we're going to craft a custom email intro using GPT-3. Let's go through it. So if I want to get the company name from this, I could do another split on the dot, but that's not exactly a great way to do it. We also have a feature here for company name cleanup, which is good if you already have the name and it has like LLC or Inc. or Corp, things like that at the end. It even works for international things like LTD or GmbH in Germany, and it will clean up the company name. But we don't even have that yet. So what I need to do is get from this to the company name, and I'm going to use Clearbit for that. Clearbit is a pretty cool service for enriching your data and like lead intelligence. But one of the best things about Clearbit, I think, is they have this API. You can actually use a paid API and a token. They even have free APIs as well. But we're going to use this very simple service called the autocomplete API. What this does is it allows you to pass in a query and it'll come back with a suggestion. So in this case, I'm going to pass in the domain, and I don't need the logo, but I want the name of the company back. So to do that, we're going to use the custom enrichment service in Gigasheet. We're not going to have to write any code, and we're going to do this 1,000 times. Again, we could do this millions of times, but for the purposes of this example, I'll just do 1,000. So what I'll do is I'll copy and paste this curl request from the Clearbit API documentation, head back to Gigasheet, under functions, select enrichments. I want to choose custom enrichment with curl here. When I select custom enrichment with curl, you'll see I land in this box, and I'm going to paste that curl request here. In the example they give, they use segment. So if I jump back to their documentation, you can see that they use segment in their example, and this is the kind of response that they issue in JSON. Well, I don't feel like writing all the code to do this. I just want company name. Why does it have to be so hard? So it doesn't. That's why I'm going to use Gigasheet, and I'll leave the example in here. Click Next, and you can see we've parsed this out and changed it a little bit, but I've still got that example in here for segment, which is perfectly fine. What I'm going to do is highlight segment, and I want to replace that with my domain column, this column that we can still see back here, and I want to replace it with that variable so that it'll iterate over that. So I'll choose domain and hit insert column reference. Now you see it's replaced segment with these asterisks and domain, the column name, and then a bunch of other asterisks. That's exactly what I want. So next, I'm going to test it out. This is the response we got back from the Clearbit API on the first couple, and it looks like it worked. Here I've got the company name that I want. It also gives me back like logo and some other stuff and other name variations, but I just want the first instance that it's returning here. And that's the only column I want to bring back. If I wanted to bring back the logo, I could do that as well, but I'm not going to do that for this example. I just want this one column to be added to my data set. So I'll hit apply. It's going to tell me it's going to do this 423 times. You might be wondering, well, I've got 1,000 rows. Why are you only doing it 423 times? Well, Gigasheet has recognized that the same domain name has been repeated more than once in this data set. So it doesn't need to make multiple requests. This is especially good if you're paying for API requests. In this case, it's free, so it doesn't really matter, but it does save us some time. It'll run in about half as much time. Gigasheet automatically does kind of a dedupe step there to help you out. I should also mention, if I had filtered this list, let's say this was like 20 million rows of data, and I filtered it down to just the 1,000 I was interested in, the custom enrichments will run only on the filtered data set, the current resulting rows. So this looks good. I'll hit proceed and run. And you can see here I get a little notice. This could take up to an hour. It sort of depends on demand on the servers, how fast Clearbit can respond, and also how many other jobs you might have running at Gigasheet, but this should really run pretty quickly. You can see the progress here that it's 2% done, and now it's jumped to 5%. And I'll just let this run, and we'll do a little time lapse, and then we'll take a look at the results. Okay, so this has been running for about 4 minutes, and it's at 96%, now 98%, so it should be completed in a few seconds. I should have also mentioned this data is all synthetic, so these are not real email addresses, so I wouldn't actually try to email those folks. But it looks like we've got some responses back from the Clearbit API. And this response code 200 just means it was successful. But in some cases, it wasn't able to return a company name. So here I'm going to rename this actually. Company. Here I'm actually going to delete this column because I don't really need that information here. So here we've got information on where it's been able to retrieve. And actually what I'm going to do is exclude any that are blank so that I've only got these examples here. This one in particular just doesn't look right, so I'm going to delete that row as well. But the rest look good. We're down to 814 rows here of data. It looks pretty good. Next, what I'm going to do is use another API with GPT-3 to actually write a custom intro for an email. And what I want to use is the person's first name and their company name in that intro sentence. And I'll show you how to do that. So the first custom enrichment we did was super simple with the Clearbit API. Now we're going to get a little more complex and use the GPT API. Now, you've probably played with GPT-3 in ChatGPT, which is great for content generation and playing around. But if you really want to do things at scale, you'll need to use their API, which you can get free credits for, and you can also purchase. But it's pretty affordable. What we're going to do is create a custom enrichment that asks the AI model to write an intro to an email and maybe mention our company and also the person's first name and their company name. Let's give this a shot and see what happens. So I've already logged into my account on OpenAI. What I find the easiest thing to do is to go to the playground, just write an example like this. something like that. I could play with the settings here, choose a different model. Maybe for what you're doing, you need something less sophisticated, that's fine. But what I really want to do is go here to the view code. And I'm going to take this curl request you'll see here. I'll hit the copy button and I'll go back to Gigasheet and I'll put it in to our custom enrichment. I'll hit custom enrichment again, curl. And I'll paste this in. So here's that code from OpenAI and from their example, the example that I created. Now the important thing here in this step is you'll want to include your token or key. And you can see here before moving to the next step, include any tokens or fixed parameters. So it's really important that we do that. Obviously I'm going to blur this because I don't want you using my key for your work, but now I hit next. We can see we've cleaned up this request and formatted it nicely. Okay, so now I want to edit my prompt, and instead of say write an intro sentence to Joe, I want to say insert the first name column reference. So I've highlighted the text here, I selected the column there, and then I hit insert column reference, and you can see it's replaced it with these asterisks. I also want to replace the company name Acme with the company name from my file. So I'll select that column, hit insert column reference, and now we're ready to go. So now it's making requests to the OpenAI API, and it's bringing back the response and parsing it out for me here so that I can see all the possible things that I could add to my file. I've got some date timestamps, IDs, other information about how many tokens have been used and so forth. But really all I'm interested in is this text. And you can see it worked pretty well. Hello, Quentin. I hope this message finds you well at Etsy, etc. Perfect. So I'll hit apply. In this case, it's going to run 337 requests. And I think that's fine. So I'll hit run. You can see again, I get this little pop-up telling me it could take some time, and then it'll drop me an email when it's done. This is handy if you're doing like thousands or millions of requests. It could actually take hours to process, but Gigasheet will drop you an email when the job is completed, or if there was an error, it will let you know as well. We will let this run. I'll pause the video, we'll do a little time lapse, and then come back and show you the results. So it's been several minutes and I've come back to my sheet and I can see I've got this alert that the enrichment has completed. This one took a little longer. Not sure if that's because we were enriching more fields or just the response time from the GPT API. Anyway, we can see here that it has completed the task. Once again, I'll delete the 200 field. This would just show if there were errors that were coming back from the service. This is the field. It's just appended the first column name that I inserted, and that's why I put it next to first name. I just moved it over here, and I'll rename this column to be GPT response. And we can see here that did a pretty good job. It's pretty cool. The cool thing about using AI as your enrichment service is you can have it do all kinds of things. So in this case, I used it for content generation for the email, for example, but I could also use it to evaluate an equation. Like I could do math between columns. I could ask it what language this is in, all kinds of stuff. All the things that the GPT model can do, you could use via API in this case. So this is a quick example of how we could use it for doing an outbound sales email. You can use it for product descriptions. You can use it for millions of different things. But that's how you use custom enrichments in Gigasheet. You can do this with any service that has an API where you can make a curl request, which is just about every API that's out there. All the modern APIs pretty much allow you to do this. And without writing any code, you can usually find the example in the code documentation. In this case, it's shell script or an HTTP request, a GET request. In the case of OpenAI, you can find it here. You can also find it in their code documentation. And we'll be posting lots and lots of examples on our website at gigasheet.com. You can get started today for free and enrich up to 1,000 rows at a time. Thanks. Hope you enjoyed it.